Hey friend, please subscribe. 1 second for you. Big deal for me.
I was 5 when the county took me from Stephanie. I remember her yelling at the microwave, barefoot with chipped red polish, while the sink behind her overflowed with dishes. Our screen door was busted so bad it never closed unless you kicked it. That morning, a woman with a clipboard and a voice like she was reading bedtime stories said, "Wade, grab your shoes." I grabbed both, but only one had laces. We didn't go back. Quick note before we jump in. Drop a comment with the city or country you're listening from. It helps us see where everyone's tuning in and plan the best time for new stories. Thanks for watching Revenge by Frank. All right, let's get started. My name's Wade Taylor. Back then I was a kid. I grew up in Willowport, a coastal town with more salt in the air than money in the banks. They took me to Gray Sound home. Yellow siding, crooked mailbox, and a porch swing that made this awful screech when the wind hit it right. That's where I met Mrs. Moore. She had hard eyes and warm hands. She gave me 2 rules that first week, like she was handing out keys. Set your own boundaries, she said, and mean your yes and your no. She said it like a warning, like she'd seen what happened when you didn't. I didn't talk much that year. I stayed in the reading room most days, tracing floor plans out of old Better Homes and Gardens magazines. The carpet smelled like dust and lemon cleaner. There was this beat-up fan that never stopped humming. I'd sit cross-legged, coloring in shingles, thinking maybe if I drew the perfect house, my mom would want to live in it. Stephanie showed up now and then, sometimes with stale gum, once with a guy who didn't say a word. One day she didn't show up at all. Later, a neighbor told me they found her by the river. That was it. Just papers in a box and a burial without me. I didn't cry. Not then. I threw a chair in the reading room and got suspended from group for a week. That's how it came out. Between 13 and 17, I spent more time in the Willowport library than in any school cafeteria. I'd sketch front porches and archways, back staircases, that old train depot with the long windows all boarded up. It looked like it was waiting for something. Or someone. Every Thursday, Mrs. Moore ran this little book circle. I read at those. Old journals from the town founders, Mark Twain, bridge design manuals. Yeah, really. People nodded like I was saying something important. Maybe I was. When I turned 18, Mrs. Moore handed me a ring with 4 keys: front door, mailbox, laundry, and storage. She pressed them into my palm like she was giving me a loaded gun. "Congratulations," she said. "You're your own landlord now." Then she gave me one last speech in that empty little apartment. The fridge buzzed like it was working overtime. She looked me dead in the face. "You'll be pressured, son. Men get cornered different ways. Respect, money, favors. You owe no one your peace." I didn't say anything. I just nodded. My throat was too tight to talk. 2 days later, at Thursday Book Circle, this new guy showed up. Vicente Robinson, old enough to be my grandfather, shirt buttoned to the top, gray around the edges but sharp. He didn't say much, just listened, but he watched like he was weighing every word. After the reading, he walked up to me and said, "You speak like a man who sees bones in buildings. Come see my library." I said yes, before I remembered I was supposed to be careful. Vicente's house sat up on a ridge that looked straight out over Gray Sound. It was the kind of place you slow down for, even if you don't know why. White trim, slate roof, and a wide porch that creaked in a way that made you feel like it belonged to someone serious. The porch swing moved slow, even when there was no wind. The whole house gave off this tight, respectful air, like it didn't care if you liked it, but you better not disrespect it. Inside smelled like wood polish and old books. First thing he said when I stepped in was, "Shoes off, and coasters always." I liked that. I liked knowing the rules. He didn't talk too much, and he didn't try to fill the silence. He let the place speak. He led me down a hallway to a room lined with shelves from floor to ceiling. No decorations, no trophies, just row after row of leather-bound books, old town plats in oversized drawers, newspapers wrapped in yellow twine, and a blueprint cabinet that groaned every time you opened it. "Help me catalog this mess," he said, motioning to a stack of folders beside the desk. "And I'll pay you better than the marina store." I told him I'd take the job, but I wanted things clear. Work boundaries, privacy, no weird strings. He gave this little smirk and said, "Mrs. Moore called me yesterday, laid it all out." I should have figured. She never left anything to chance. He pointed at a small camera mounted near the ceiling in the corner of the library. "So your people know where you are," he said, "and so you can point them to it when someone gets nosy." I nodded. It was blunt, but it worked. Took the weird out of things. I think he knew that. Saturday mornings became our rhythm. Marta, his housekeeper, cooked breakfast. She was somewhere between 60 and timeless. She never asked what I wanted, just put a plate in front of me that matched my appetite like she'd read it off my face. Vicente ate light, plain toast, fruit slices, black coffee. "Doctors have opinions," he'd say, like that explained it. Mostly we talked buildings, real ones, falling down ones, what worked, what wasted space. He'd lean back, describe some dumb hallway design and ask, "What would you do with that?" I'd sketch something on scrap, and he'd nod or shake his head. It wasn't school. It was sharper than that. No grades, just pressure. He was testing how my brain worked, even if he pretended he wasn't. First week, he handed me a stack of restoration guides, about 20 volumes from the late 60s to early 90s. Yellow covers, thin pages, all lined with handwritten notes in the margins. My job was to tag and log each one: year, author, region, notes. I learned more flipping those pages than I did in 4 years of school. He never asked much about Stephanie, but every time her name came up, through some article or reference, he'd glance sideways at my face, quick and quiet. He didn't press, just watched. Third week in, he came into the library holding a worn photo. He let the quiet stretch, just holding it out like I'd recognize the face. The guy in the picture had my red hair, same jawline, even the same dumb tilt to the smile. "Darren," Vicente said. "My son." I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. I just kept my hand on the edge of the desk. He sat down, folded the photo, and didn't bring it up again that day, like the whole thing was just some extra page in a book he wasn't ready to open yet. That afternoon, he pulled out an old pad of paper and tossed it in front of me. "You any good at reading rooms?" he asked, almost like it didn't matter. I looked at him. "Like what kind?" He leaned back. "The old station at Gray Sound. It needs one again. If I gave you a small budget and a checklist, could you bring it back without me lifting a finger?" I swallowed. That depot had been boarded up for as long as I could remember. People tagged the outside, but no one went near the inside. "I'll try," I said. Vicente narrowed his eyes. "Don't try. Do it." Then he handed me a manila envelope. Inside was a simple brief, notes about structural damage, original layout, safety codes, a tiny budget, and a city contact name. There was also a key taped to the inside flap, old and rusted, with a tag that said, "Depot South Entry." He tapped the envelope once and stood up. "Bring it back. Quietly. On time." That was it. No big speech. No follow-up. Just the job and the weight of it pressing into my chest. Vicente waded through a long beat, watching the tide smack the rocks outside the window like he was timing his words. When he finally spoke, his voice was slower, but not soft. "I tracked a woman named Stephanie," he said, like it was just another fact in a long line of them. "She had a baby with my son Darren. I found that baby in Willowport, years later. Watched him. Tested him. Then I opened my mouth. He looked at me like I should have already figured it out. Maybe I should have. "You're my grandson." I didn't say anything smart. I didn't move. I just stared at a crack in the surface of his desk, the one that ran like a lightning bolt through the oak. It looked like it had my name in it. He didn't stop there. "Darren was a fallen prince," Vicente said. My words, not his. I spoiled him. He got careless, ran with people who loved the shine but not the man. Tried to clean up, didn't make it. I shifted in my chair, but my body still felt locked. He didn't paint Stephanie like a monster, but he didn't throw a halo on her either. Some folks are a storm, he said. You build higher if you can, but you don't curse the weather. I wanted to ask why he waited, why he let me walk into his house like I was just another project. But I knew. He had to see what I was before he told me what I came from. He leaned forward, hands folded, elbows on the desk. You've got 2 half-siblings, he said. Kelly Mercer's kids. She was married to Darren for 6 years. Long story, none of it quiet. Their names are Isabel and Stephen, both grown. He didn't smile when he said their names. You'll meet them soon, he added. But the way his jaw clenched said he wasn't looking forward to it. Then he slid an envelope across the desk. Thick paper, sealed tight. I found this inside a copy of Moby Dick. Spine was split, tucked between pages like it didn't want to be found. It's addressed to whoever Darren left behind. He didn't tell me to read it, just let it sit there like it might bite. Then he pulled out another document, folded 3 ways, and set it down like it was heavier than it looked. Key test, he said. Restore the Gray Sound Station reading room. Keep the original maple benches. Fix the south windows. Get the city's blessing. Open it to the public by Labor Day. No speeches. Just good work. He didn't ask if I wanted to. He already knew. I was 18 with no money and a borrowed level. He knew I needed something to prove, and something to prove with. 2 nights later, I was sketching bench placements on a scrap sheet when Marta poked her head into the library and said, You've got visitors. They walked in like they owned light. Isabel Robinson, red hair like mine but done up in some kind of perfect twist, heels on wood floors like she was walking a runway. Stephen followed behind, less polished, but with the kind of face that gets used to being liked. Marta offered drinks. They said no like they were being polite. Isabel's eyes scanned every corner of the room before she smiled at me. We've heard so much, she said. Thought it was time to meet the famous architect in training. Stephen chuckled and added, or at least the guy with the golden key. I didn't rise to it. Vicente stood near the fireplace, quiet, watching like he was keeping score but hadn't decided which team he was rooting for. They asked about my apartment. I told them it was small, but mine. They asked if I posted my sketches online. I said no. Stephen joked that he'd help me build a brand. Isabel asked how long I'd been in town, like she didn't already know. They stayed just long enough to make it clear they didn't think I belonged. As they were leaving, Isabel slowed near the desk, eyes landing on the manila envelope with the depot brief sticking out. She tilted her head and gave a little half smile. Cute little assignment, she said. Like Boy Scouts. You gonna earn a badge too? She didn't wait for a response. She turned and walked out like she'd said something clever. Vicente didn't say a word until the door shut behind them. Then he picked up the brief and tapped it against the desk. You've got work to do, he said. I nodded and took the envelope back. I didn't invite them. Isabel texted me like it was already decided. She said, Stephen and I were thinking we could swing by. Toast to the new family. No pressure. I replied, I don't drink. She sent back, we'll bring sparkling cider. Totally dry. I said fine. Then I stood in my kitchen for 2 hours with a sponge and a bottle of dollar store cleaner, scrubbing the stovetop like my life depended on it. I even pulled out the burners. The place still smelled like dust and laundry soap, but it looked decent. They showed up around 7 with this fake fancy bakery box tied in twine, 2 bags of off-brand kettle chips, and a bottle that looked like champagne. The label said, Old Shore Sparkle, mock logo, twist cap, and 0.0% ABV, stamped across the bottom in bold. Stephen held it up like it was some kind of peace offering. You're safe, man, he said, flashing that grin like I was the one who needed calming down. We poured the fake cider into flutes Marta had sent me last week with a dish towel and a note that said, for company. I added Sprite for myself just to make it look less flat. Isabel set up her phone like she was documenting a mission. "Just for memories," Stephen said. Camera aimed my way half the time, the other half at his own face. We clinked glasses. I tried to act normal. It got weird fast. Stephen leaned back on my old bar stool and said, "So, real question. Vicente's business. What's your angle?" I looked up. "What do you mean, angle?" "You know, who gets what? What you think you deserve out of it." I shook my head. "I don't deserve anything I don't earn." Stephen laughed. Not casual either. Loud and right in my face. Isabel didn't laugh. She was quiet, steady, sliding her phone against a coffee mug just enough to tilt the camera toward me. That thing didn't stop recording. Stephen kept poking. "Come on, man. Say something real. Say the old man's out of touch or something." I didn't take the bait. I said, "This old station plan needs real work," and kept my tone even. I meant the depot, obviously. Later, I'd find out they sliced that sentence so it sounded like I was talking about Vicente, like I was calling him washed up. Stephen leaned too close. I stood, just to put some space between us, and he stepped sideways into me like it was some choreographed bump. I instinctively reached out, put a hand on his shoulder so neither of us went down. He yelped like I'd shoved him across the room. That's what made the final cut. No start, no context. Just me, standing over him, one hand out, looking angry. Then Isabel said, "Let's call grandfather." Before I could answer, she hit FaceTime and shoved the phone in my face. Vicente answered on the second ring. His voice was slow but clear. "Wade, you okay?" I nodded and said, "We're fine, sir. Just visiting." Right then, Stephen leaned in and clinked a flute right next to the phone mic. It was loud and sharp. Vicente's face tensed. Then the screen froze for a second and the call dropped. Isabel smiled, clicked her tongue, and said, "Must have lost signal." I stared at both of them. They looked back like nothing had happened. 10 minutes later, my phone rang again. Marta's voice was panicked and low. "He's on the floor," she said. "Ambulance is on the way." I turned and looked at Stephen, then Isabel. Neither said a word. They didn't look shocked. They looked uncomfortable, like kids caught in a prank that went too far. I grabbed my keys and left them there. At the ER, I got stopped at the front desk. The nurse didn't even ask my name. "Family only," she said. I said, "I'm his..." She cut me off. "They already told us who's allowed back." Then she glanced sideways. I followed her eyes and saw Isabel standing behind the counter, arms folded, face tight. Stephen was sitting in one of the lobby chairs, scrolling his phone like nothing mattered. I didn't push. There was nothing to push against. So I sat in a plastic chair and waited. The hours dragged. People came and went. The vending machine ate $2. The coffee tasted like metal. I sat up straight for most of the night because if I leaned back, I'd fall apart. I must have nodded off around 4. When I woke, the room was empty. The TV was playing some silent weather report, and the sky outside had that bruised pre-dawn color. I pulled out my phone. One new message. "Mrs. Moore. Come by." That was it. No punctuation, no explanation. Just that. And I swear, in that moment, I needed her voice more than I needed sleep, food, or fresh air. Mrs. Moore didn't ask questions. She didn't blink when I told her what happened, about the cider, the edits, the call, the ambulance. She stood in her kitchen in her usual gray cardigan, stirring instant coffee like it was enough. When I finished, she just said, "Okay, 2 tracks, work clean and prove clean." She pointed her spoon at me like it was a pen. "Start the station," she said. "Get your hands busy, and I'll call the archive." Only she would think about birth records before finishing her first cup. The next morning I unlocked the depot. The place breathed dust. Gray Sound Station had been gutted long ago. Tagged walls, cracked tiles, broken window panes. A raccoon had clearly been squatting near the south alcove. I brought a crowbar, a broom, and a heavy-duty trash bag. That was it. I started in the reading room. Busted glass crunched under my boots. Plywood covered most of the benches, but when I peeled one board back, I found original oak pegs set into the subfloor and maple seats underneath, scratched, but solid. Same age, same era, just waiting. I found a small metal sign under one bench that said silence. That sign did something to me. Made my chest tighten up, like maybe this room still remembered what it was supposed to be. I went home that night and roughed out a work plan. Patched the roof leaks above the south windows, stripped the old paint off the benches, refit the warped north door, and borrow a dehumidifier from the fire station. I sketched it all on graph paper and taped it to the wall inside the station where anyone could see it. The next day, I showed up with gloves and sandpaper and found an old man already there. Retired carpenter. Name was Al. I recognized him from the library, one of the guys who used to nod along during Thursday readings. "I seen your sketch in the window," he said, holding up a thermos and a belt sander like it was a care package. "Don't argue. I'm bored." He worked slower than me, but cleaner. Knew how to brace a cracked frame with wood that didn't match but still looked right. Knew how to tell stories without making it about himself. I filed for a minor restoration permit that afternoon. The city clerk was a guy named Pritchard. Late 40s, always pretending to be busier than he was. Tried to give me the runaround about the wrong form. Al just laughed. "Bring him a coffee tomorrow," he said, and a copy of the code page he forgot was on his own desk. He'll move. Mrs. Moore called later that day. She didn't waste time. "Found a notation," she said. "Birth log from a county storage box they forgot to digitize." I sat on the floor of my apartment with the phone pressed to my shoulder like the words might warm me. She went on. "Matches a red-headed boy born to a Stephanie, 10 days earlier than the hospital record says. Bayshore, charity clinic, no follow-up forms, just hand-scrawled initials." "What's it mean?" I asked. "It means the paper trail isn't missing," she said. "It's just sloppy. No miracle, but it gives us ground." She paused. I could hear her flipping another page. "There's more," she said. "The archive clerk put me through to a retired nurse who used to work that clinic. Said she remembered seeing Kelly Mercer at the records window the week Stephanie was discharged." I didn't speak. I waited. Said the woman paid cash and gave compliments. Said later that week she woke up during night shift and saw Stephanie's bed empty and the window open. Didn't report it. Just remembered it. Is that usable? It's memory, Wade. Not a formal accusation. But it's real. And it lines up. I didn't say thanks. I just nodded, even though she couldn't see me. That night I finally opened the letter. The one Vicente had given me. From Darren. The handwriting was jagged, like the pen was fighting his hand. No dear son. No name. Just started mid-thought. Said he tried to get clean more times than he could count. Said every time he picked himself up, he found another way to fall. Said, "If there's a kid, I hope he likes books." That line sat in my throat like a stone. He didn't talk like a man trying to be forgiven. He talked like a man who didn't expect to be. That hit harder. I folded the letter back into its envelope and slid it into my pocket. Then I went back to the depot and started scraping paint again. You can't fix a life in an afternoon, but you can fix a bench. I turned 19 the week before Vicente died. The station still smelled like fresh lacquer and copper polish. Al and I had just finished sanding the last bench when Marta called and said, flat out, "He's gone." The service was held 3 days later, in a low stone building by the marsh where the reeds grew taller than most kids. The kind of place you only visit once in your life, unless you're in the wrong line of work. Labor Day was coming. The station's opening was locked in. But the funeral came first. I wore the shirt I ironed the night before and sat in the back row, shoulders hunched, eyes low. Not hiding, just staying out of the blast zone. Up front, Isabel cried like she'd rehearsed. Big eyes, wet lashes, tilted head. Stephen kept shifting his weight like he wanted to check his phone every 2 minutes. Between them sat a woman in a black veil that dipped over one cheek like it was placed just for effect. That had to be Kelly. She leaned in close to Isabel a few times, whispering fast, always with one hand on her arm like she owned her. I felt like I was trespassing, and I guess I was, in their eyes. When the crowd thinned out, I waited near the side aisle until most people were milling around the entry. Then I walked up to the casket. It was simple, heavy wood, dark finish, clean lines. Vicente would have hated anything flashy. I looked down, swallowed hard, and said, "I'll finish the station." That was all I came to say. I meant to walk right out. But as I turned, the woman in the veil spotted me. She didn't hesitate. She didn't ask. She just came. Heels clacking down the center aisle, veil fluttering slightly like she was dragging a shadow behind her. "You!" she hissed. I didn't move. "The stray." Stephen appeared beside her before I even blinked. Isabel came from the other side. I was flanked. They each took one of my arms and walked me backward like they were helping an old man. Soft touches, polite pressure. Then, outside the door, they let go at once. I stumbled, hit the curb with one foot and barely caught myself. "You don't belong," Isabel said. Her voice was smooth, flat, like she was answering a complaint at a hotel front desk. "Don't show up again," she added, "and don't even think about money." I didn't say anything. I didn't trust my mouth to come up with words that wouldn't get me arrested. I walked home slow. When I got inside, I didn't take off my shoes. I went straight to my laptop and found Stephen's burner account. I already knew it existed. He used it to post fishing videos and fake prank clips, but now it had something new. A clip labeled, "Midnight Toast. LOL, who's the adult now?" I clicked play. There I was, in my own living room, holding a plastic flute. Isabel's phone caught me mid-sentence, eyebrows raised. The audio was loud, full of party noise, cheering, clinking glasses, and someone yelling, "Midnight Toast," like it was New Year's Eve. I paused the video, scanned the frame. Behind me, in the cheap mirror on my wall, I saw it. The green-lit digits on my stove clock. 5:21 p.m. Not midnight. Not even close. I hit play again and scrubbed to the part where Stephen bumped into me. The camera dipped, just for a breath. But I caught it. Froze the frame. My mouth was moving. I backed it up. Played it again. The words matched. This old station plan. Not old man. Not even close. I paused again, grabbed a pen and started writing. Timestamp, stove clock, frame dip, angle of the phone, sentence structure. I listed it like evidence, not emotion. Truth has to be simple, clean. People don't believe drama. They believe data. I exported the file, screen capped every key moment, and made a backup on a flash drive. Then I saved it all twice more, uploaded to cloud storage, and emailed it to myself under a subject line no one else would ever guess. That night my phone rang. Marta. Her voice was so low I almost missed the first word. "Notary," she said. "Tomorrow. Be there." That was it. I didn't ask questions. I didn't need to. I pulled off the shirt I'd worn to the funeral, rinsed it in the sink, and hung it to dry. Then I went to bed with my phone under my pillow, and that footage burned into the backs of my eyes. The notary's office sat in what used to be a fish cannery, still smelled faintly like salt and old wood. The beams overhead were original, sanded and varnished, but not covered up. It had character, the kind Vicente would have liked. Honest materials, no nonsense. The room was long and narrow, with a solid table in the middle and one carafe of water with real glasses, not plastic cups. There were folders stacked at the far end, pens aligned like rifles, and a laminated sign that said, "Do not touch unless directed." I sat at one side. Isabel, Stephen, and Kelly Mercer were already seated at the other. Kelly didn't look at me once. Isabel looked straight through me like I was a smudge on a window. Stephen looked everywhere but my direction. Ceiling, corner, hands, floor. The notary, gray suit, small glasses, calm like this was his fourth will of the week, cleared his throat and said, "There's a letter and a video." He didn't ask if we were ready, just hit play. Vicente appeared on the screen, sitting at his desk, navy sweater over a collared shirt. He looked tired but steady, not broken. The camera was centered, no filter, just him and whatever he had left to say. "Wade," he said, looking straight ahead, "take this, and don't apologize for it." He didn't pause. He laid it out straight. He was leaving me the business, the residential properties, the full library collection, and something harder to carry: his name. He explained it slow, like it had been rewritten 100 times. Operational control and voting rights rest with the board and a named trustee until Wade turns 21. He holds the beneficial interest and a non-tie-breaking seat. He will have help. School comes first. He is not a mule. He is a builder. He said it again. "You're not a mule." Then he turned, looked right at Isabel and Stephen through the lens. "You will receive options for a stake. Sensible, modest, but only after 6 months of honest full-time work in roles assigned by our board." He tapped the desk with his knuckle. I remembered that sound. He only did it when he was trying not to raise his voice. "Show up, take instruction, do not harass my heir. If you quit or scheme, the option disappears." He leaned slightly closer. "Any tampering with evidence, any public defamation, any interference with safety on a site will forfeit your option. Immediately, permanently. Options vest only after 6 consecutive months of verified full-time work, confirmed by both human resources and site logs." He sat back and took a breath like it physically hurt. The video ended. The screen went black. The notary picked up a folder and began reading in that dry legal tone that makes your ears ring. "This codicil, dated 3 weeks prior to Mr. Robinson's passing, affirms the transfer of beneficial interest to Wade Taylor, effective immediately. The operational board, acting in conjunction with the named trustee, shall oversee business continuity until Mr. Taylor reaches the age of 21. I didn't smile. I didn't shift. Mrs. Moore's words were still in my head. Don't gloat. Work. The notary turned to the second folder. We also have documentation submitted by Mrs. Lenore Moore from the Willowport Archive. A birth notation, a clinic log from Bayshore Charity Medical, and a signed letter from the chaplain who served there between 1999 and 2004. He laid the folder on the table without sliding it, like even the air between us mattered. Kelly jerked like someone had lit a match under her seat. She lunged for her purse and started to rise. The notary didn't flinch. "One more thing," he said. He pulled out a thumb drive, already plugged into a laptop. "Body camera footage," he said. "Public records request. EMT timestamp shows Mr. Robinson in physical distress before any video call was placed." I looked at the screen. There was Vicente, slumped in his chair, hand clenching at his chest while Marta dialed 911. The call hadn't happened yet. The footage didn't lie. Kelly sat back down, stiff and silent. Isabel's jaw tightened. Her left hand curled into a fist and opened again. Stephen blinked hard, like he was watching a trick unfold that no longer made sense. I kept my hands flat on the table. That's how I'd been taught in school. When you don't trust your fingers to behave, keep them where you can see them. The notary shut the laptop, stood slowly, and stacked the folders with care. "That concludes the recorded directives," he said. "All rights and limitations take effect immediately. You may now speak with counsel or not." No one moved. For a second, it felt like the whole room forgot how to breathe. Then the notary added, almost as an afterthought, "Final message ends with this. Finish the station. Open those doors." That line hit harder than anything else. The video had ended 20 minutes ago, but somehow he was still giving orders. I went back to the station the next morning and didn't come alone. I brought a crew patched together from whatever was left in town, 2 retirees from the old boatworks, plus a pair of kids from the trade program who needed logged hours. No one asked questions. They just showed up and got to work. We sanded benches, reglazed panes, and patched the leaks over the south wall with a strip of copper Flashing Al had stashed in the back of his truck since a church job in 2009. He said it still had a blessing baked into it. I believed him. I filmed everything. Every pass of the sander, every screw that went in, every board that came off and went back better. Not to show off, just to keep the record straight. Dates, times, hands. You log it all and let the footage speak when people try to twist the facts. We used shared folders with basic chain of custody notes and made sure nothing could be accused of being edited later. Transparency is armor. Mrs. Moore used to say that, and she was right. Pritchard, the city clerk, tried to slow roll the occupancy sign-off, said the paperwork wasn't stamped right or the inspection was missing something. But the deputy inspector walked in during lunch, saw the braces we'd added to the sagging rear shelf, and nodded. "You did it square," he said. Then he signed the paper on the hood of his truck and left us to it. I went to the board that afternoon and made a direct ask. Put Isabel and Stephen on honest work, no favors. Stephen could be a materials runner and site assistant on the depot itself. Isabel could help April in the archives with cataloging and grant paperwork. No fake roles, no desk corner titles, real labor or none at all. Stephen showed up late on his first day, arms crossed like a bouncer. Al didn't flinch. He handed him a box of mixed screws and said, "Count me 200, then learn what a number 8 looks like." Stephen rolled his eyes but got to it. By the end of the week, he could spot a hinge type in a pile without flipping it twice. Progress. Isabel didn't last long. 3 mornings, tops. She sat across from April, tried to steer the conversation, tried to reorganize the process like she was a supervisor instead of a trainee. April just handed her a thick stack of accession cards and said, "Alphabetize, and don't skip Q like the last guy did." The station itself came together like it remembered how to be whole. We finished painting on a Thursday. The last pane of glass got set on Friday morning. That afternoon, I walked the whole place alone and touched every bench, just to feel it, just to know. We planned a quiet opening. Saturday morning, coffee urns, no speeches. We had a printer hooked up to a borrowed laptop so we could issue library cards on the spot. Nothing fancy, just honest use. I asked Mrs. Moore to cut the ribbon. At first she said no, then she said yes and cried anyway. We did it on Labor Day, right on the original deadline. Vicente would have liked that. After the ribbon, people started wandering in. Some to browse, some just to sit. It was quiet, like the room had its own volume setting that didn't need adjusting. I stood near the front table, cleared my throat, and picked up the mic we used for announcements. "I need to clear something up," I said. "Won't take long." We rolled down a screen and set up a projector. Side by side, we played Stephen's edited video and my original. His version started with the fake party noise and the cork pop. My version showed the same clip but raw, no yelling, no alcohol, just 3 people sitting in a quiet apartment under warm light. I paused the screen and pointed to the stove clock reflected in the mirror behind me. 5:21 p.m. Audio says midnight, but this clock never lies. That's my stove. I scrubbed forward to the moment Stephen bumped me and the phone dipped. Froze it. "Here," I said, pointing. "You can see my mouth. I say station, not old man. If you read lips, even a little, you'll see it. So will any software." Our counsel stood nearby logging the raw files and timestamps as we played each clip. The projector fan was the only sound for 10 seconds straight. I didn't call names. I didn't throw punches. I said, "I don't drink. I didn't that night." And Mr. Robinson's medical episode, per EMT timestamps, began before any call was placed. I let that settle. Grief makes us sloppy sometimes, but we don't get to be sloppy with a man's memory. In the back, Isabel stood stiff as glass. Stephen stared at the floor, then at Al, like he wanted someone to tell him what to do next. Al nodded once, quiet but clear. Like, "You know the next right thing, kid." Stephen walked up after everyone drifted off and stood in front of me with his hands clenched. "I'm sorry," he said. Not loud, not to the room, to me. That mattered. The station doors stayed open all day. People came and sat in silence like they were listening for something the rest of the world didn't let them hear. I stepped outside once, leaned my head against the cool brick, and whispered, "We finished the work." Monday morning, I called the meeting myself. No formal invite, just a short message with a time and location. It was held in the same conference room where Vicente had once gone over board notes with a red pen and a voice like thunder in a storm. Same table, same chair at the head, left empty. Just me, Isabel, Stephen, Mrs. Moore, and our counsel. I brought Darren's letter, folded once, no envelope. When everyone had settled, I opened it flat on the table. "I'm going to read one part," I said. No one interrupted. I found the paragraph I'd marked with a pencil tick in the corner. My voice held steady. Barely. He wrote, "If my old man ever finds the kid, tell him I was trying when I died. I know trying's not the same as doing, but I was still trying." I let the words breathe. Let them cut like they were supposed to. "He was trying," I said, "and I'm trying. That's the deal." Then I looked straight at Isabel, then Stephen, then the attorney. "I'm laying out boundaries now." Counsel lifted his pen, ready. "Board control stays with the named trustee and the senior staff, as already recorded. I hold a non-tie-breaking seat in the beneficial interest until I turn 21. All paychecks tied to attendance and results." I didn't stop to soften the edges. I didn't owe anyone that. No media statements without board or legal approval. No filming inside my home or on company sites without written permission from both legal and site management. Isabel crossed her arms. I didn't blink. I added, "I'm not raising my voice today. I don't need to." Counsel cleared his throat and read the codicil out loud again, for the record. Per the terms already filed, any harassment, tampering, interference with site safety, or public defamation results in immediate forfeiture of the employment option. There are no exceptions. Isabel looked like she was chewing a thumbtack. She didn't speak yet. Stephen shifted in his chair, looked at me, not the lawyer. He said, "Can I keep working?" No entitlement in his tone, no mention of the option. Just that question. I said, "Yes, but no shortcuts. You show up for 6 months, you work, you learn, and when it's done, you'll have a stake and a job you can name to your kids one day." He nodded. Didn't smile. Just nodded like he finally understood the weight of it. Isabel finally opened her mouth. "I'm not filing cards." I didn't react. I just replied, "There are real jobs, marketing, development, logistics, but they come with real work. You want the stake? Show up and earn it." She didn't answer, just turned her head slightly and let the silence do the rest. 2 weeks later, security pinged me. There'd been an attempt to log into one of the burner accounts, the same one that posted the edited video, using a new timestamp, a new file name, and a different audio track. It failed. Counsel followed the IP trail, matched it to a device previously synced with Isabel's tablet on our internal Wi-Fi. Same address, same browser fingerprints. We followed protocol. Counsel drafted the letter and filed it. We pulled her option, formally by the book, with documentation attached. There was no fight, no yelling, just a signature and a door that shut behind her. She walked out of the building like the floor might burn her if she stayed another minute. Stephen kept showing up. He carried door slabs with Al, learned how to lay a level across uneven stone, patched plaster until it looked clean enough to eat off. He kept a notebook in his back pocket with pencil sketches and measurements he'd figured out on his own. One morning he brought coffee for the crew, left it on the table, didn't announce it, didn't pose for a photo. That was the difference. I took Darren's letter and framed it in a small shadow box, no glass, just raw wood. I placed it on the shelf in the depot library next to Vicente's old pipe and a faded train ticket from 1912 that Al found between the floorboards. Not a shrine, just truth, all in one place. I'm 57 now. Got more gray in my beard than red, and my knees tell me when rain's coming better than the weather app. I still keep a key to the gray sound station on my ring. It's worn smooth around the edges. We run the company like it remembers where it came from. No quick flips, no ego jobs. We fix roofs that should have been replaced 20 years ago. We save stairs, old floors, brick walls that got carved up in the name of modern. We don't chase fancy. We build steady. That's the promise. People always think revenge looks like fire or headlines. Truth is, the best payback I ever got was unlocking a door that had been nailed shut for 3 decades and letting people sit and read inside. Quiet. No speeches. Just use. Isabel moved to the coast, somewhere slick with glass buildings and fake promises. She found a market where her last name still opens doors, but not as many as it used to. We didn't chase her. We didn't need to. Consequences know how to wait. Stephen kept his head down and worked. He earned his little stake after his 6 months, then earned a promotion after the next 6. He bought a used pickup with his name on the title and stopped dressing like he was scared someone would make fun of him. One time, I saw him stop a subcontractor mid-sentence for trying to cheat a load-bearing wall. He didn't yell. He just stood in the guy's way like that boundary really mattered. That's when I knew he'd turned the corner. Mrs. Moore still calls me kid even though I've got workers with grandkids. She shows up to every project launch with cookies in a reused grocery bag. They look store-bought. They're not. She writes everyone's name on the napkins in Sharpie like that's normal. Once a year, I go to Vicente's grave with a rolled-up floor plan. I uncap it, weigh the corners down with rocks, and stand there like I'm giving a report. I read off what we've done, what we restored, what we opened, what's next. I'm not talking to air. I'm answering someone who gave me a shot when he didn't have to. I kept Darren's letter on a shelf in the depot library, framed behind glass with no title above it. Just the letter. No edits. No explanation. Guys who don't read still end up staring at it. Usually twice. Maybe it's the handwriting. Maybe it's what they see in the word trying. The reading room is open 6 days a week. We added a shelf for trade skills. How to run a plumb line. How to estimate lumber. How to read a city permit. Kids wander in after school, sit cross-legged on the floor and draw stares they wish they had in their homes. Every time I see one do that, I stop and watch. Doesn't matter how late I'm running. The video? I never sued. We had the receipts. We played it once and left it there. They felt it. They're probably still feeling it. That was enough. I'm still building. That's the job. Vicente said not to be a mule. So I'm not. I'm a builder. And I'm home. Before you head out, let me throw something at you. If you were standing in Wade's shoes, carrying a legacy that almost got twisted out of your hands, would you have had the spine to keep building anyway? If you've got the hype feature, please tap it to push this story further. And take a second to subscribe and hit like. It matters more than you know. Then drop a comment, even just good story, or tell me what you would have done. Love you guys.
YouTube picked this for you. Tap it. Let's see if they guessed right.